I walk through the shadow of death left to fear. This is a journey through the halls of hell.
Yes people, what is good? I am BA, back again with a little review this week to break up the Game of Thrones reactions. I recently watched Squid Game for the first time, seasons 1 and 2. I know season 2 and 3 are basically a giant season that's been split in half, so I'm looking forward to season 3 also, but so far I've just seen the first 2. I think season 3 is coming out in a couple of months. Also, there will be spoilers in this review, so if you haven't watched it and don't want plot points spoiled, then do not continue. Now, Squid Game was something that was on my radar essentially from the moment it dropped. Obviously, it became the #1 show on Netflix. Everybody was talking about it when it first came out. And like always, I kind of have to hang back from these things in case it won some kind of vote on my Patreon. It has popped up in a couple of votes in the past, but enough time had passed and it hadn't been recommended in the most recent polls that I thought, oh fuck it, I'll just watch it myself. And I kind of caught myself being a bit elitist because when everybody was talking about it, I was like, what, is this the first time people in the West have seen Asian horror or something? I thought it was just going to be a strange Asian horror, and I assumed that it was getting its hype because it was the first of its kind on Netflix. I was completely wrong, by the way, but let's start at the start. It introduces us to a bunch of characters down on their luck in the first episodes. I'm not going to go through character names and all of that, but it does a really good job of showing desperate people in desperate times struggling for money. It just sucks, and it's something that 99.9% of us can all relate with. But it's so well written that you really are rooting for these characters and you dread what's to come. And the way they actually recruit people into the Squid Game is interesting. I've got to say, like, everything before they actually get to the Squid Games I found interesting. It gripped me into the show. The way that he encountered that random person at the train station who brought him into that game that if he lost he would get slapped in the face, but if he won he would get money, as a sort of way of measuring whether someone was willing to take punishment for the potential of a prize. And then from there, once he's given the card to join the games from the slap man, he gets picked up in a van and he's gassed asleep and then wakes up on the island. It's very similar to Battle Royale. And then after all that brilliant setup, we've got all these poor characters now stuck in the Squid Game, and of course, first of all, they don't know what it's going to be. They don't know what they've gotten themselves into. When the first game starts and about half of them die, they are all absolutely shocked there is literal human deaths involved in this game. So that shows you how little information they had going into this thing. Now, at the same time, we have an undercover cop who is on the case and has managed to get himself onto the island. He's wearing different masks and slowly upgrading his level of mask to be able to access different parts of the facility, etc. And I think they worked his storyline in very well. There's a lot of good little characters in amongst this cast in the Squid Games, by the way. We've got a gangster guy who's the sort of bully of the group with a snake tattoo on his face. We've got a sweet old man who seems to have a lot of good veteran advice for the rest of the people in regards to how to complete the games. And the main character also has one of his best friends in the Squid Game. And although one comes from a background of struggling with gambling addiction and the other comes from just having a failed business venture essentially, they both kind of try and help one another get through the games to some extent. And as the numbers whittle down, you realise what the show's truly about. And I was so wrong assuming this was just going to be a strange Asian horror. In fact, there's not actually a lot of gore in it. Very few of the games have any actual physical ramifications on the players other than if they lose, they get shot. There is a couple games that they do fall and take fall damage, but it's not like there's horrible saw-like devices waiting to cut them up or anything like that. And for some reason, that was the impression that I had that this show was going to be like. But no, it's not about that. Yes, there is gore in places, but what it's truly about is human desperation. People wearing wearing masks, people showing their true colours in moments of fight or flight, people doing absolutely anything for motivations like greed and shit like that, and it just is a melting pot of all the best and worst parts of humanity when all of these people are put in an identical desperate situation. As the detective storyline progresses as well, we find out that the frontman he's called, who's kind of the leader of the Squid Game, is also his brother, so it ends up them both shooting one another in the shoulders, but he's obviously apprehensive about arresting his own brother when he realises that it's him behind the Squid Games. And of course, our protagonist does end up winning, and the last couple of games are absolutely brutal. His friend betraying the Ali character, I will never forgive him for it. As soon as I saw him on the ground making a little bag for those marbles, I knew he was swapping them out for stones. What an absolute piece of shit who could not die quick enough, and rest in peace Ali, a gullible, lovable man that was too pure for this earth. Oh, I'm still not over that shit. And after our protagonist wins, we get an even bigger reveal. So he wins the money, he gets out the Squid Games, only to get a message from the old man who he thought had died earlier, and it's revealed that the old man himself was the organiser and creator of the Squid Games, and he then passes away. And that leads us right into season 2, and it doesn't just pick up where it left off. I feel like the first 2 episodes of the second season kick right back into full throttle. Again, I was so interested straight away. Our protagonist is now amassing an armoury of weapons, and he's going to get an actual militia which he can hire with his prize money to try and find this island and storm it and put an end to the games once and for all. And even better, him and Detective Guy are now working together. And while the main man has been amassing all these weapons, Detective Guy has been desperately searching for this island with the help of a fisherman, but hasn't had much luck. So after a while, they realise the only way they'll really find it again is if the protagonist who won the first Squid Game re-enters the Squid Game. So they put a tracker on his tooth, and he once again calls the number and gets picked up to go into the Squid Game. Unfortunately, they are wise to the fact that his tooth has a tracker, and they throw it on some random island, which basically leads the detective and the rest of his gang on a dead-end trail for the rest of the season. The only progression we get with the detective character for the entire rest of the season is that it's revealed later that the fisherman is in fact in on it and kinda leading them in the wrong direction, and the fisherman murders one of the detective's crew at night. I figured the fisherman would be in on it. You know, any guy who's on the fishing routes anywhere near that island would be murdered, replaced, or bought off. So yeah, completely makes sense. Anyway, these Squid Games start very similar to the first ones. Even the first game is similar, and I like how they did that because it almost lulls you into a false sense of security that you know what is then coming next, and you don't, because the second game straight away is different. And my god, the twisted reveal once the first game has been completed in this season is incredible. The frontman himself, the detective's brother, has decided to enter the Squid Game, and our protagonist doesn't even know he's the frontman because he's only ever seen him with a mask. What a brilliant setup. So, you know, as the games progress, the frontman's playing the game and acting like he's helping the team, and interestingly this season as well, after each game they get to vote whether or not they stay or leave, and they wear a patch on their jerseys to show which way they voted. This inevitably splinters the survivors into 2 large groups who just hate one another, and it leads to a big fight in the bathroom where the rapper character, my god, I'm a rapper myself, and Jesus Christ, sometimes media does us no favours because this guy is a douche. But yeah, the rapper character, Thanos, is stabbed and murdered. A few other characters are murdered in that scene, and it really comes down to them counting how many people have died to see whether or not they're going to win this vote. Now, this all comes to a head when they realise that that evening the yes voters are going to attack the no voters, and they can actually take advantage of this by hiding under the beds, waiting until the guards enter, and then taking the guns off the guards and actually trying to siege the entire complex. And they manage to do this. They shoot out all the cameras, cameras, there's a few ex-military members on their team, and it turns into a crazy action sequence where they're having a shootout with all these members of the Squid Game, guards of different types. And it is so heartbreaking because there's a couple people that do some dumb shit in this episode, and if a few things had went differently, they would have actually succeeded. But first of all, we got the cowardly character who didn't quickly run away and get the magazines. Now, this guy claims he's ex-military, and he even showed a tattoo, but I've got a feeling that he is one of these stolen valor type people, and the tattoo might be false, because he was cowering behind a wall. He didn't want to go and get the magazines, and then when he went and got the magazines so they could reload their guns, he didn't return to the gun battle. He was an absolute horrible letdown in the final episode, after I kinda liked his character for the majority of the season. Even worse, our main man, the protagonist who won the first Squid Game, manages to get up to the offices, to the room of the man who controls the Squid Game, only for that to be the moment where the front man, who has also entered the Squid Game, reveals himself not to our protagonist but to the others he was with, that he is in fact the enemy, and kills everyone around him, forcing everybody to have to retreat, and it is a failed attempt at taking over the facility. Oh, it was such a heartbreaking ending, and I can't believe they just brutally decided to cut off the season at that point, and now we have to wait months to see how it's going to end. But just as good as the first season, and I've got to say, I've had so much fun this week watching Squid Game Series 1 and 2. So if you have watched it before, I hope you enjoyed my review of it, and if you haven't watched it before, I really apologise for spoiling all that shit, but it's, more your fault for deciding to continue to play the videos. Someone needs to take a good long look in the mirror, and it's not me. It's you. And as always, join the Patreon to help support this channel. Like, subscribe, comment, anything you want, and I will get back to you. Until next time, I have been BA. Peace.